Another breach of track and trace data as another woman gets a random text after giving her details. Police complain about having to wear PPE. Not that many of them seem to bother anyway. Off-duty police constable punches a staff member in the face at a wedding party. And police investigators' elderly dementia patient in care home is found with a maggot-infested sore. This and more coming up. Don't forget, these reports are daily Monday to Friday. Please remember to subscribe and hit that bell so you do not miss any future uploads. And if you appreciate the work I do, please consider joining the channel Patreon for as little as just £3 per month to enable me to continue providing this content. Hello ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, innies, outies and in-betweeners. My name's Dan and welcome back to another PAP Reports. It's Wednesday the 16th of September 2020. Now this report is a special one for me as the channel has now hit and exceeded 25,000 subscribers. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who has been with me from the very start, who have helped to get the ball rolling by sharing my videos. I also want to thank the rest of you who came across the channel as maybe a recommended video and stuck around. I'd also like to thank CrimeBodge, as my analytics tell me I get a fair amount of traffic from recommended videos on his channel. And as we've now hit 25,000 subscribers, this weekend I will be giving away 2 body cams. Once we hit 30,000, I'll be giving away an HD camcorder, so please keep sharing. Right, on with the show. It seems I was right about the story last week, about the woman whose mobile phone number was harvested from a track and trace form she filled in a pub and was then sent unsolicited messages from a man who worked in the bar. I said it certainly wouldn't be long before we hear of another breach of people's data. Not that I'm taking credit for something that was blatantly obviously going to happen. But we do have another incident of a track and trace form data being misused. This is mainly down to the fact that even though businesses are being asked to collect people's personal data, there was, and as far as I know, still no guidance or rules from the government around keeping that particular information safe. Granted, there is the Data Protection Act, or GDPR, which puts the onus on the company to keep people's data safe and not misuse it. But with the unprecedented introduction of track and trace data harvesting by companies, it seems they feel it's not important enough to handle the same way that they do other personal information. This time it's 25-year-old Kat Kingsley from Cornwall, who apparently got on a city sightseeing bus tour with a child she's a nanny for, giving her details for track and trace as requested, but was shocked to receive a message what she described as creepy and said left her weirded out just 3 days later. The message she received via WhatsApp said, "Basically, the other day after you left I felt silly, keep looking around to see if I could spot you again. Yesterday they sent me again and I felt even more silly realising I was still hoping to see you. Along with the idea of this stupid message, you've been living in my head. Not really good conditions, but the rent is cheap and there's plenty of free room. For 3 days now, sweet. Joking, joking, joking. So today I decided to stop being silly and go full stupid and write you, knowing all the risk involved in using data that's not supposed to be for me. Don't get me wrong, mainly I'm just so zealous and professional to test in advance a totally random phone number to see if it is correct in case the NHS will need it in the future. Anyway, apart all the due apologies you owe me for all this silliness and stupidity you generated in me, I need you to tell me something to make me finally realise that the smile wasn't that gorgeous and it's not really you, but the fact that I like all the cats in general." Kat said, "I'm a nanny and I took the child I was caring for to Windsor for a day out and wanted to take him on the open top bus. I bought a ticket off the man, I cannot remember his name, only that he was Italian. And before getting on the bus I had to sign my name and number on the track and trace paper, which was a clipboard he was holding. We got on the bus, had a great time, said our goodbyes. This was on Thursday. Then on Sunday night at about 10 PM I received very strange messages from the bus ticket man. At first I was pretty shocked, I never thought this would happen to me, but I figured I'd wait until the morning to ask for advice from people. When I woke up I thought about it more and more and realised how big of an issue this actually is. Not only that, but he had mentioned the child's name in the messages as well, so as a duty of care for the child, I had to report it anyway. I suffer from situational anxiety and I was so anxious, not only that this had happened, but the fact I had to go and tell the family that unfortunately their child is involved. I was quite literally shaking all morning when I told the parents I have a number for a man that works for the company to give me a formal apology. but I'm not sure how I want to follow through yet. I would just urge people to be cautious, as the system is not very safe and needs re-evaluating. Now, I don't think I will give my details over again. I'm going to be wary of everywhere else. And I don't blame you. In fact, I think this is a warning to everyone who's giving their details out. I said it when the idea was announced. It's a bad idea because of the lack of protection and the lack of clarity on how the data should be stored. Cat added, the government really need to reassess the track and trace system. All it'd take is for the wrong person to get the wrong information and somebody could end up in a much worse position than I. I want to know how our government can make our data safer. I just sort of stared at the messages trying to figure out. It seemed like a small thing when you first look at it, but when you look into it, you realise it's much bigger. The company have said that they have now launched an investigation and said it takes the matter extremely seriously. They said if the incident was proven from our investigation, this is totally unacceptable and it would take appropriate action. Adding, it goes against the values of our organisation entirely. A Department of Health and Social Care spokesperson said the unauthorised use of customers' information provided for contact tracing is unacceptable and every business must comply with all data protection legislation. Well, perhaps you should have made that bit a bit more clearer when asking businesses to start taking people's information in the first place. Now, personally, I refuse to go anywhere that requires my information, but that's just me. However, I would seriously suggest that you all consider whether or not you want your data being misused in a similar way. Sandwell councillor Joanne Hadley has been suspended from the Labour Party after she was allegedly recorded using discriminatory terms about a colleague in a phone call. This is just one of apparently 10 live complaints that are being carried out at the moment into conduct of Labour members. Hadley, Cabinet Minister for Safer Communities, maintains her innocence, claiming that the recorded call was edited by political opponents, although I'm sure she's not important enough for opponents to bother with all that trouble. But what do I know? A party spokesperson said the Labour Party takes all complaints of racism extremely seriously and they are fully investigated in line with our rules and procedures, and any appropriate disciplinary action is taken. An email sent to all councillors in Sandwell from the local party chair on Monday allegedly said that 2 of their number had been suspended, one of whom is understood to be Ms Hadley. It then detailed a further 2 councillors had also been placed under investigation, but it's not clear what for at the moment. Now, there's currently no information that I've found as to what may have been said, and it's also not clear whether Joanne Hadley remains on the Cabinet. But of course, these public officials need holding to account for any wrongdoings, and I will bring any further info as and when it becomes available. Now, as we have all seen for many months now, the police seem to either be immune to COVID-19, don't believe it exists, or simply don't care, as countless videos and photos have shown hundreds of police constables across the land ignoring any and all government guidance or the use of PPE. Understandably, in some situations, they're simply not going to have time to put PPE on before trying to detain an aggressive person, for example. But we have seen them simply wasting their time trying to find something to do, trying to bully and intimidate members of the public, while they, the police, ignore social distancing, but then go on to cry about people coughing in their general direction. Well, it seems that police, in this case Police Scotland, have gone as far as writing a strongly worded letter to Scottish Parliament complaining about their safety advice. The police have apparently been told that before stepping in to stop fights and restrain people, they are to put on aprons and gloves. Now, let me be clear about where I stand here. It's clear that it's not possible in all cases for police to stop and put on their PPE when an incident occurs right in front of them. They have a duty to protect the public from imminent harm, and so I fully understand that they won't always be able to get their PPE on before getting stuck in. But, as I said a moment ago, there are many cases where we've all seen where police attend a scene and spend some 20 minutes trying to find a crime, and in some cases create one out of nothing, and they stand there breaching the rules. I personally don't think wearing aprons while out on duty is a good idea. Those plastic aprons could get wrapped around someone's neck. They could, in some cases where police are all over a suspect, suffocate them or be used to suffocate the police themselves. So I don't think it's necessarily a good idea. In custody by detention staff, absolutely, but not out on the streets. However, gloves and face masks, as long as they are enforcing it onto us, should always be worn, especially as they're likely to be coming into close contact with far more members of the public than we ourselves will. Anyway, the Scottish Police Federation raised their concerns with the health policy in a damning letter to MSPs probing officer safety in a pandemic, stating that Health Protection Scotland is woefully ill-equipped to offer relevant advice to operational policing. Their letter to MSPs, dated September the 14th, states, "Only those with a complete absence of understanding of the realities of fighting, restraining in the police setting could seriously consider that officers would A. Stop to enable the donning of plastic aprons, goggles, visors and gloves in the microseconds that usually precede occurrences of fighting resistance, or B. Have ready access to such items on their person as a matter of routine. The entire recommendation would be laughable were it not so serious." So nothing about how they wish they could wear the PPE or explaining how in some circumstances they will, like if they're in a van on their way to a public disturbance, for example, with several police in a van, where only the driver need not have time to put their PPE on right away, whereas all the other constables would obviously have the time to do so. No, it seems like they just don't want to wear it. The organisation said they don't doubt the sincerity of the Chief Constable when it comes to the safety of officers, but said the intentions are not always reflected across the service. The Scottish Police Federation has faced, and to some extent continues to face, resistance and even hostility from the Police Service of Scotland on issues of officer health and safety and COVID-19, their letter to Holyrood's Justice Committee claimed. This hostility exists amongst some of the chief officer team and reinforces the worst of attitudes towards the health, safety and welfare of police officers. Says the organisation writing to Scottish Parliament telling them the police won't be thinking about health and safety of the public. Hypocrites. In Holyrood last month, Chief Constable Ian Livingston insisted officer welfare is a priority. He said, "What I have always sought to do is minimise and to mitigate risk. We've always followed the best practice we've had from Health Protection Scotland, from the Health and Safety Executive," he said, in response to earlier concerns by the Scottish Police Federation. The concerns of those in the Scottish Police Federation Executive are absolutely held in good faith and they raise them in a robust manner. As Chief Constable and as the senior constable in the organisation, any suggestion that I don't take the safety and well-being of officers, staff and their families extremely seriously, I don't accept. Well, personally, and I'm not trying to influence your own thoughts here, I think that police are one of the biggest threats when it comes to spreading COVID. They seem to think, as I said at the start of this story, they are immune, don't care or don't believe it exists themselves. And as they interact with so many people during the day, then go back to the station, interact with all their police buddies, the risk of transmission is huge. And so I think they certainly, at the very least, be wearing gloves and masks as a matter of course. Now, I know I'm going to get comments from people who are going to tell me to wake up, COVID isn't real, blah, blah, blah. Although I welcome your opinions, I do have my own opinions. I've made them clear in many videos, that I believe there is something, but I certainly don't believe it's anywhere near as bad as been made out. But I'm simply looking at this situation from a view that if we are being policed into these measures by the police and government, then those policing these measures should be making the example and doing it themselves. Tomorrow, the 17th of September, is ex-Gwent Police Constable PC Joshua Cavill's gross misconduct hearing. Cavill is accused of attacking his fellow police constables at the brew house and live lounge venues in Cardiff and faces claims that he ran away from security staff and police who attended one incident before telling them he was armed with a Glock handgun, and also accused of slapping a man across the face at the live lounge. The full list of allegations detailed to Cavill are as follows. 1. On a date between November and December 2018, whilst off duty in the brewhouse licensed premises in Cardiff, you bit the left arm of a PCA, causing reddening and bruising to her arm. Such conduct constituted an unlawful assault. 2. On a date between November and December 2018, whilst off duty in the brewhouse licensed premise in Cardiff, you bit the left arm of PCB, causing reddening and bruising to his arm. Such conduct constituted an unlawful assault. 3. On the 6th of March 2019, whilst off duty at the live lounge licensed premises in Cardiff in the company of PCC, you bit the right ear of PCC on 2 occasions, causing pain and redness to his skin. Such conduct constituted an unlawful assault. 4. On the 6th of March 2019, whilst off duty at the live lounge licensed premises in Cardiff, you slapped Mr K to his face, causing reddening and discomfort to his face and left ear. For this common assault, you received a formal police caution on the 7th of March 2019. 5. On the 6th of March 2019, whilst off duty outside the live lounge licensed premises in Cardiff, you 1. Ran away from security staff and police who had been called to the premises to deal with the assault on Mr K, and or 2. Informed the police officers that you were in possession of a Glock handgun, and or 3. Were obstructive once you were arrested for common assault by refusing to comply with instructions and struggling with the officers And or 4, sought to escape from police officers who had arrested you as a result of his conduct. He was further arrested for being drunk and disorderly on the 7th of March 2019. He received the police caution for the criminal offence of being drunk and disorderly in a public place. Well, this boy certainly doesn't do things by half. I almost have some respect for him. But that doesn't mean he should stay a copper. Anyway, his hearing is tomorrow. By the sounds of it, it's going to last a day or two, but I will bring you the outcome as soon as I can. Another Welsh police constable now who will be facing a misconduct hearing in the very near future after she appeared at Llandudno Magistrates Court after punching a member of staff at Garthmill Hall Country House. Oh my God. After she appeared at Llandudno Magistrates Court after punching a member of staff at Garthmill Hall Country House in the face during an event. 38-year-old PC Natasha Haff-Jones was off duty when she punched a worker while attending a colleague's wedding party. Rhiann Jackson, prosecuting, told the court Jones arrived as part of a group, including her husband, described as being drunk on arrival. The court heard she was saying, "I'm a police sergeant." It was said the defendant lunged towards the man in an unsuccessful bid to headbutt him. Jones also hit her sister-in-law's head against a wall. She admitted 3 common assaults on Andrew Reeve and Caroline Roberts, and Richard Black, defending, said Jones had anxiety and depression. Of course she did. That old chestnut. Continuing, previously she had arrested a man who she knew for domestic violence, and during the hour-long journey to custody at Carnarvon, she was subject to abuse and threats. This had a massive effect on her, Mr. Black said. Then she shouldn't be in the police if she can't take a bit of verbal abuse. What is it with the police forces of today? It's full of snowflakes and fairies. District Judge Gwen Jones said, "It's clear to me you consumed a copious and excessive amount of alcohol. Natasha Haff-Jones has been ordered to do 160 hours unpaid work and pay £300 compensation to Mr. Reeve and £340 costs." 2 Cambridgeshire police constables have been found to have committed gross misconduct and have both been sacked or given written warnings. I'm going to give you 20 seconds to write your answer in the comments, and I'll give you the answer once I've told you what they've done. Cambridgeshire PC Amy Taylor and PC April Cooper were subject to a disciplinary hearing after a member of the public reported the series of unprofessional Tik Toc videos to the force in April this year. Chief Constable Nick Dean said there were numerous clips, adding that these videos, which I have seen, range from dancing in uniform in a police station whilst on duty to being within a marked police vehicle in uniform on duty using offensive language. In one clip with the caption, "When calling in sick at work and they ask what's up," PC Cooper appeared in universe shouting "coronavirus" down the phone. This clip was made in the height of the pandemic, which is still ongoing, yet you appear to be insensitive to the many thousands who have suffered and the vital role that emergency services and other agencies played in this outbreak, and continue to do so, said Mr. Dean. This clearly shows the lack of respect and sensitivity to those that were suffering, or indeed the families and friends. This brings the service into disrepute and damages public confidence. You did not treat the public or your colleagues with respect or courtesy. Mr. Dean said he accepted that the officer's motivation was to boost morale, but added that some of the clips presented cannot in any way be seen to do this. He said that the reach of the videos on Tik Toc had been extensive, but that the officers took immediate action to remove the clips once highlighted to them. "I accept in hindsight that you both have accepted that you did not consider the wider implications of your actions at the time," he said. "However, there is no doubt in my mind that the clips have damaged the reputation of this constabulary." So, did you write your answer in the comments as to whether you think they were given their P45s or a written warning? Well, the misconduct panel found that their actions did amount to gross misconduct, and they were both handed their final written warnings. Now, it seems as though coronavirus isn't the only pandemic going on at the moment, as we have yet another care home under investigation. Thames Valley Police were called after Royal Berkshire Hospital staff treated a retired butcher, known only as Ben, for what they described as shocking sores and bruises in July 2015. The 89-year-old resident suffering from dementia was found with a maggot-infested pressure sore at a Wokingham care home. The care home, by the way, has not been named, or of course I would be telling you which one it was. A Safeguarding Adults review published this week revealed the care home, which has not been named, was investigated for possible ill treatment or willful neglect. Police seized paperwork and potential evidence while staff were interviewed by a detective sergeant. No criminal charges were brought against the care home provider, but they were ordered to implement an action plan and make a range of improvements. In April 2015, Wokingham Borough Council accepted that Ben lacked capacity to consent following a deprivation of liberty safeguarding assessment. During that assessment, Ben's daughter raised concerns about the quality of his care, but they were not shared with the council for 5 months. She said her father was left to sit in his own urine at the care home, went days without a wash, and once went a full day without food. The review states concerns were not fully shared with the local authority until August the 6th, approximately 5 months after the submission of the DOLS assessment. The opportunity to appropriately respond and assess the quality of care and impact for Ben was missed. When Ben was admitted to hospital in July 2015, staff found bruises all over his body and 12 pressure sores, including one in his heel, which had maggots in it. They said most of the bruises appeared to be a result of being bedbound, but one on his neck was consistent with a hand mark. Police launched an investigation and the council teamed up with several agencies to carry out an inspection of the care home to check on other residents. The care home was also placed on an embargo list during investigation, which meant that no more people could be admitted to the home at that time. The investigation also found that a member of staff had correctly raised safeguarding concerns when Ben was a resident there, but the council failed to conduct a thorough investigation. Then the council should be seeing the inside of a courtroom, surely. The review states the referral was considered by the local authority, but ultimately closed as the findings concluded that the care and support within the home were enough to meet the identified needs. It is not clear how the decision was reached by local authority and may reflect the need scrutiny of such decisions in safeguarding. The review concluded that all agencies were responsive after concerns were raised about Ben's injuries. But it also states that it was clear that preventative measures such as a regular programme of contract monitoring and proactive quality assurance visits should have been carried out. After the incident, Ben was transferred to another care home where he later died following a battle with pneumonia. He had several pressure ulcers, but they were not found to have been contributed to his death. Poor sod. But you know what gets me is that if preventative measures should have been carried out but weren't, then that's gross failure to do the basics, and somebody should be held accountable for the quality of care that poor old Ben was receiving. I can't believe that yet another care home literally gets away with abusing their residents. Now, I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again in light of this story. If you have family members or even friends in a care home, please check on them often. See if their demeanour has changed. Make sure they're happy and being well looked after. Now, I think most, if not all of you, know that I don't believe in police assaulting the public or the public assaulting the police, as in causing physical harm to them outside of the protection of immediate harm situation. But I do believe that we are and should all be treated equally under the law and not have groups of people who are given more protections than others. Well, I'm now increasingly concerned that people are going to be stitched up properly by the tougher legislation on those who assault emergency workers, including the added protection of the police covenant. I can see that some people who may not have actually assaulted police but may have simply resisted an unlawful arrest getting the full 2-year term for doing just that. I think it's clear that some people do fight the police, but many, if not most, don't assault them. They may have resisted and a copper may have broken a nail, bent their finger or scuffed a knee, but this is still used by the police as an assault in order to charge the person they're detaining, especially in situations where the police have little else and want to make sure they teach the person a lesson in situations where the police know they have nothing to back up their claims or a stop and search, for example. But with Labour's Chris Bryant now calling for the government to prove that they are going to dish out tougher sentencing, I think this puts us members of the public in a very precarious position. Writing an article in the Sun toilet paper, Bryant wrote the following. Be warned, Bryant doesn't know how to use paragraphs and only knows how to use sentences. Spat at, kicked, pushed down a flight of stairs, groped, punched and stabbed. Sadly, that's the experience of far too many of our emergency workers. The police, fire officers, even ambulance workers face violence from numbskulls every week. And the number of these assaults has gone up and up every year. The authorities still don't seem to take it seriously. One police officer told me she was told by a magistrate that a bit of violence is just part of your job. Mental health nurses who have been attacked had also told me the police had refused to act when patients have attacked them. It drives me furious. An attack on an emergency worker is an attack on all of us. I changed the law a couple of years ago. I'd come top of the ballot in the House of Commons so I could put forward any change in the law I wanted. After consulting people in the Rhondda, I argued for a new offence of assaulting on an emergency worker. In theory, there was already an ancient law, but it only applied to police officers, and I wanted everyone to start taking this seriously, so I argued the maximum sentence should go up from 6 months to 2 years, and it should apply to all emergency workers. Boy, did the Tory ministers hate it. Unnecessary. They snapped. No way, said Theresa May and Amber Rudd. Completely disproportionate, said Dominic Raab and Rory Stewart. They even threatened to throw the bill out unless I cut the maximum sentence to 1 year instead of 2. Now the government says it is going to double the sentence. Great, hurrah, well done, I'll vote for it. But I fear they don't really mean it. This is just a Downing Street gimmick. Because there's no point in having a new law if you're not going to enforce it. And all the evidence is that since my bill came into force, the government has done nothing to make sure that the prosecuting authorities take it seriously. The sentencing guidelines still don't properly reflect the change in the law. They still ignore spitting as an offence, even during a pandemic. No wonder there has only been a tiny trickle of charges, prosecutions and convictions, even though there are thousands of assaults on emergency workers every year. So I welcome the government's change of heart, but they really do have to prove they mean it. Well, that was as hard for me as it was for you listening. Now, I don't know about you watching this video, but I've seen countless examples of people being given prison for spitting at police, and rightly so, it's disgusting. But also people have been given sentences for coughing at the police and other emergency workers too. And if this isn't protecting emergency workers, then I don't know what is. What this says to me is that along with not being able to write an article properly using paragraphs, he's calling for the government to make an example of someone by using the full force of the law and locking them up for the maximum 2-year sentence given for assaulting an emergency worker. Whereas we still see police getting away with doing far worse against the general public. And this should really worry you. Now, don't get me wrong, those who are going out to fight with the police and punch them in the face, like Welsh PC Natasha Haff-Jones did to a member of the public mentioned earlier, then they are the ones who deserve the force of the law, providing it was a directed attack and not simply a scuffle, because the police were trying to suffocate them, for example. But this seems to me that it is going to be abused severely, and people who have done little more than resisted, even if it's a resistance your body does automatically because you're being put into a stress position, are going to be royally stitched up, while the police go on to continually assault members of the public with often little more than a stern word from their chief constable. What do you think? Obviously, let me know in the comments. And a quick message to all the neighbourhood grasses out there watching this. Pretty Useless Patel and Kit Malthouse are two of many public officials who have insisted that members of the public should grass up their neighbours if they are seen to be potentially breaking the rule of 6. Not a very bright idea, but you know, if you want to grass up people you have to live next to, then good luck with that. However, Ken Marsh, head of the Police Federation of England and Wales, has asked people to not call them, warning that police forces will be flooded with calls. He said police would be bombarded with hundreds of thousands of curtain twitchers shopping their neighbours, adding that precious resources will be diverted from tackling serious offences like knife crime. It will just inundate us with calls. Does he think we have an endless supply of officers who can just go out to these things? It will be hundreds and hundreds of calls coming in from curtain twitchers. I get the sentiment, I want us all to be safe, but I don't think this is the answer. It just creates those little self-styled heroes who will be on the phone non-stop, he said. The warning from Ken Marsh comes after Kit Malthouse said on BBC Radio 4, "What we're hoping we'll see for the rule of 6 is that is what we saw for the whole of lockdown, which is extremely high compliance. In the end, we all have to recognise that we have an individual duty towards our collective health, and we hope that view will prevail. There is a non-emergency number that people can ring and report issues if they wish to. Angry Tories also hit out at the Grass Your Neighbour order, warning it will turn us into a nation of score-settling busybodies. Ex-Tory leader Ian Duncan-Smith said busybodies may try to settle scores. He said, calling on people to spy on each other is not a particularly good situation to be in. Police will be inundated and unable to separate out the trivial from the serious. They could be snowed under with people trying to get even. Tory MP Steve Baker blasted the Stasi-like surveillance tactic, warning East Germany, here we come. National Police Chief Council Chairman Martin Hewitt said people should try and talk to their rule-breaking neighbours before calling the police. He said once these rules and regulations are enacted, they are law. If people are deliberately breaking the law, we would expect members of the public to take responsibility to report that. Over the 6 months, we've seen a number of points, particularly when new regulations have been brought in, that we get calls to police in and we will respond to that. But we all have to take responsibility. As families, as individuals, as businesses, we all have to take responsibility. Home Secretary Pretty Useless Patel said troublemakers would be handed a criminal record if they ignore the fines. I think what we will see is a rise of, if people do start grassing their neighbours, in an increase of public order incidents, criminal damage and potentially assaults. Personally, if you are following the rules, then great, that's your choice. If you think that's going to keep you safe, then I respect that fully. But remember, providing you're doing what you think is the right thing to do and is keeping you safe, then it's not going to matter what other people are doing. Most people have already accepted this new normal as their way of life. The government and other officials have already said this is how it's going to be for the foreseeable future, regardless if your neighbour's having a birthday party or not. So might I suggest that you keep your nose out of other people's businesses and concentrate on your own. Now, something I think everyone watching these videos can agree on is that violent and sexual offenders should be dealt with far more harshly than they currently are. We see it day in and day out how offenders of these types of offences get a slap on the wrist, a suspended sentence or some equally laughable jail term. Well, Justice Secretary Robert Buckland has announced that there is going to be an overhaul of sentencing laws, seemingly focusing on the most serious category of offences, with whole life orders also being extended to 18 to 20-year-olds convicted of terrorism. Mr Buckland said the changes to sentencing would ensure the most serious violent and sexual offenders get the prison time they deserve. Announcing the proposals, the Justice Secretary said the proposals were an opportunity to grow trust in the system. Yeah, providing the law is equal to all people and not just some groups of people. Because nobody wants to see other people with more protection than others. Because if that doesn't change, then the trust may be short-lived if you regain any at all. He said sentencing failures could perpetuate low-level offenders getting stuck in a life of crime, saying this means that offenders have little hope of being rehabilitated, and we, as a society, have little hope of ending their cycles of crime, in which any one of us can become victims. More help is being promised for those with mental health and addiction issues. The changes have come as a result of the court systems falling on its arse because of coronavirus, which has caused some 500,000 cases to backlog the system. In the white paper that's been published today, some of the interventions proposed are the option of a whole new life tariff for killers under the age of 21, whole life orders for adults who murder children, absolutely on board with that one, but what about adults who abuse children? Raising the sentencing threshold for serious offences, including a 3rd strike for burglaries and 2 strikes for knife possession. New powers to halt the automatic release of offenders who pose a terrorist threat or are a danger to the public. And I'll agree with that too. Reducing the opportunities for over 18s who committed murder as a child to have their minimum jail term reviewed. Using GPS tags to track burglars, robbers and thieves when they are released from prison. Deploying so-called sobriety tags to tackle alcohol-related crime. Now, as you can tell, I'm all for some of these points, but some of them I think are not a good idea. While tougher sentences are among the measures proposed, changes to criminal records to reduce the time offenders have declared past crimes to employers are also included in the proposals, which I don't necessarily disagree with, providing that they are the stupid kinds of things people do, like maybe once they had a fight or maybe they did some petty criminal damage. But clearly the serious stuff should never be ignored or hidden. Other proposals suggest that offenders sentenced to between 4 and 7 years in prison for serious crimes such as rape and manslaughter will no longer be automatically considered for release halfway through their jail terms. In a radio interview, Mr Buckland said, "I've been completely committed to sentencing reforms for years, and this is my opportunity to make a difference." So the obvious question here is, why has it taken so long if you were so committed? A focus on supporting ex-offenders will see custodial sentences become spent after 12 months without reoffending, with convictions of up to 4 years no longer disclosed after a further 4 crime-free years. Which, unless the courts start sending abusers to prison for proper jail terms, is a good idea, as I said, providing they are for low-level crimes committed in acts of stupidity. I do think there are some great proposals in this, but I also think there could be many issues with it as it currently stands. What do you think? Comment sections down there. An inspection of Police Scotland by Her Majesty's Chief Inspector of Constabularies has found that senior Police Scotland officers lack emotional intelligence, self-awareness and strategic perspective. Finally, somebody's noticed. The inspection report also highlights a gap in the provision of diversity training. Police Scotland said it was a learning organisation and was committed to staff improvement. A learning organisation. I think you'll find that you're a law enforcement organisation, therefore you should bloody well know what you're doing. Mrs Emery, who wrote the report for Her Majesty's Chief Inspector of Constabulary, said an organisation of the size and scale of Police Scotland is expected to invest in its leaders. This is particularly important when the service is going through significant transformation and needs talented people to drive the change. She added the lack of sustainable leadership programme since 2013 has consequences. Senior people in other agencies comment that while police leaders are very effective in command roles when responding to critical incidents, they lack emotional intelligence, self-awareness and strategic perspective. Concluded that the absence of leadership courses had created a gap in the provisions of regular diversity training to senior members of the organisation as part of their ongoing professional development, recommending that diversity training become an integral part of leadership courses as a matter of urgency. Now, I've got to be honest, I think the whole idea of diversity training is ridiculous and actively seeks to promote the fact that there are differences between people, when everybody's always calling to be treated the same. It simply makes no sense to me. Deputy Chief Constable Fiona Taylor pledged to reflect on all observations made by its partners, saying, "What I see every day are highly able and skilled leaders who inspire and enable our officers and staff to help the vulnerable and keep people safe." The Deputy Chief Constable says candidates performed strongly during the selection process for prospective chief officers across the UK, which assessed competencies such as emotional awareness, collaboration and critical analysis. She added, within Police Scotland, a new process to support continuous development and promotion based on the behaviours, values, operational knowledge and leadership requirement of officers and staff has been established. The well-being of our officers and staff is and remains a priority, and we have a wide range of support mechanisms in place. The force was due to carry out an engagement and well-being survey this year, but has been delayed as a result of COVID-19. Now, it seems to me that a lot of this is a money-wasting exercise by a bunch of woke officials. Granted, people need training in their professional development to ensure that they are the best at what they do. But actively highlighting the fact that people may look different and how you treat them, when in reality everyone should simply be treated the same, is, in my opinion, a police farce. Big thank you to channel supporters, one and all, especially the channel patron supporters. Your support is truly appreciated. And that is it for today. Please like, please share, please comment and please subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, as I'm hoping many of you will. And until next time, stay safe, look after each other, film the police, and as always, film other officials. Good night, all. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like the content and you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so. In the description of every video, there are some links to ways that you're able to help support the channel so I can continue putting out content. If you're unable to help us in that way, hit that subscribe button up the top there. If you haven't already, become a subscriber. That is support enough. Share the videos, comment, like, it all helps. If you're looking for something else to watch, up top there is my latest video. Down the bottom there is a video that YouTube recommends for you.